My name is Lola, and at 65, I never imagined my own daughter would try to steal my retirement savings. I dedicated 40 years as a teacher in California, living modestly to ensure Natalie had everything she needed. When she demanded I pay $150,000 for her wedding, I offered $20,000 instead. That's when things got ugly. She blocked me, kept my grandson from me, then invited me to dinner for reconciliation. Little did she know I had prepared for her trap. I could see it in her eyes when I reached for my purse. Before continuing my story, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up to family manipulation. I spent my entire adult life as a dedicated public school teacher in a middle-class neighborhood just outside of San Francisco. Teaching wasn't just my career, it was my calling. Every morning for 40 years, I woke up excited to shape young minds and make a difference. The pay wasn't spectacular, but it was enough to live comfortably while saving carefully. My husband, Thomas, passed away when our daughter Natalie was just 8 years old. A sudden heart attack took him from us, leaving me to raise our daughter alone. Those early years were tough, balancing grief, single parenthood, and a full-time career. But I managed our finances, carefully putting away a little each month for Natalie's college fund and my eventual retirement. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom home in a nice neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it was warm and filled with love. I taught Natalie the value of money early on, that happiness doesn't come from things, but from experiences and connections. We took affordable camping trips instead of luxury vacations. We shopped sales and thrift stores for clothes rather than designer labels. When Natalie wanted something expensive, I would explain the concept of working hours. This costs 15 hours of mum's teaching time. Is it worth it? For many years, Natalie seemed to embrace these values. She was a bright, compassionate child who excelled in school and showed real empathy for others. She volunteered at the local animal shelter throughout high school and seemed destined for a meaningful life of service, just like her mother. Everything changed when Natalie received a scholarship to attend an elite private university on the East Coast. I was incredibly proud. My daughter would have opportunities I never did. But I also worried about the cultural shift she would experience. Many students there came from extreme wealth, with family names on buildings and generations of privilege. During her freshman year, Natalie would call me almost daily, sometimes overwhelmed by the displays of wealth around her. Her roommate arrived with a closet full of designer clothes and a brand new luxury car. Other students took weekend trips to Paris or Aspen without a second thought about the cost. "It makes me feel so out of place, Mum," she confided during one late-night call. "Everyone here seems to have everything." I reassured her that her intelligence and character were what mattered, not material possessions, and for a while she seemed to hold on to those values. But by junior year, the calls became less frequent. When we did speak, Natalie talked more about parties at Manhattan penthouses and less about her studies or future plans. Her social media showed her in expensive restaurants, wearing clothes I knew she couldn't afford on the part-time job she had. When I asked about it, she mentioned new friends who were generous. That's when she met James. He came from old money, the kind of family with a compound in the Hamptons and a surname that opened doors. He was handsome, well-mannered, and genuinely seemed to care for Natalie. But his world was one of unlimited resources and unquestioned privilege. After graduation, Natalie moved to New York to be with James. She took a job at a prestigious marketing firm, a position I later learned was arranged through James's family connections. With each visit and phone call, I noticed more changes. Her accent shifted slightly to match the upper-crust tones of her new social circle. She began referring to my home, the one she grew up in, as quaint and rustic, words that felt like thinly veiled criticisms. When James and Natalie had their son Tyler, I thought it might ground them. I was overjoyed to become a grandmother and flew to New York immediately after his birth. While I was there, I noticed their apartment was filled with baby items that cost more than my monthly salary. A $6,000 crib, a stroller that cost as much as my first car baby clothes from designers I couldn't pronounce. "Natalie, does Tyler really need cashmere onesies?" I asked gently one afternoon. "Mum, we want the best for our son," she replied defensively. "James's family expects certain standards." Despite these differences, I cherished my relationship with little Tyler. After I retired at 62, I would fly to New York every few months and spend a week caring for him while Natalie and James took trips. Those precious days with Tyler became the highlight of my life. We would read books, visit parks, and bake cookies together. He was a sweet, curious child who reminded me so much of Natalie at that age. As Tyler grew into a toddler, I noticed Natalie began using my access to him as a subtle form of control. If I questioned her spending or choices, she would suddenly have schedule conflicts that prevented my planned visits. When I expressed opinions she didn't like, she would casually mention that Tyler's schedule is so busy these days we might need to postpone your visit. The pattern of financial manipulation began long before the wedding controversy. It started with small requests, help with an unexpected medical bill or a loan for a car repair. I always said yes to these reasonable needs, but over time the requests grew larger and less essential. Mum, James and I found the perfect summer rental in Martha's Vineyard, but we're a little short this month. Could you help? It's only $8,000. Or there's this investment opportunity that's guaranteed to double our money, but we need $25,000 to buy in. You have that in your savings, right? Each time I would gently decline and suggest more affordable alternatives, and each time Natalie would become increasingly cold and distant, sometimes not speaking to me for weeks afterward. James's family never made these financial situations easier. His mother, Vivian, would make subtle comments during family gatherings. "Lola, that's such a sensible car you drive. So practical for someone in your position." Or, "It's wonderful that teachers have such reliable pensions. Nothing extravagant, but so dependable." These interactions made me increasingly uncomfortable, but for Tyler's sake, I kept the peace. Little did I know that the tension was building toward a breaking point that would change everything. The day Natalie announced her engagement was actually their second engagement. James had proposed right after college with a modest ring, and they had planned a small wedding. But then James received a substantial trust fund on his 25th birthday, and suddenly the original wedding plans weren't good enough. They postponed everything, broke the first engagement, and 2 years later, James proposed again, this time with a ring that cost more than my car. The re-engagement announcement came during our regular Sunday brunch when I was visiting New York. Natalie was beaming as she flashed the enormous diamond across the table. "Mom, we're finally doing it. We're getting married next summer." I was genuinely happy for her. Despite my concerns about their lifestyle, I wanted my daughter to be happy. "That's wonderful news, sweetheart. I'm so excited for you both. I'd be happy to contribute $5,000 to help with the costs." Natalie's smile faltered for just a moment. "Oh, Mum, that's thoughtful. But actually, we need to talk about the budget. This wedding is going to be really special." James chimed in. "We're thinking about a destination wedding. My parents know the owner of an amazing resort in Bali. We can rent the entire place for a week." "Bali?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. "That sounds expensive." "It's an investment in memories," Natalie said, using the phrase I'd heard her use to justify many purchases. "Plus, James's colleagues and our social circle would expect something spectacular." Later that evening, after James went out with friends, Natalie sat me down with a detailed wedding spreadsheet. As she scrolled through the items, my stomach tightened with each astronomical figure. "The venue in Bali is $50,000 for the week, but that includes accommodations for the wedding party," she explained casually. "The catering is $22,000, but they're flying in a chef from Paris who specializes in fusion cuisine. The photographer is $18,000, but he's shot for Vogue and will create the most amazing album. My dress is $35,000, but it's Vera Wang and completely custom. The numbers kept coming: 15,000 for flowers, 12,000 for a documentary-style wedding video, 8,000 for custom invitations, 7,000 for a live band that had apparently performed for some celebrity I'd never heard of. By the time she finished, the total was just over $150,000. I sat in stunned silence trying to process the figure, nearly 3 times my annual pension income. "So," Natalie said brightly, "James's parents are contributing $50,000, and we thought you could cover the rest." "The rest?" I echoed faintly. "Natalie, that would be $100,000. She nodded as if this was completely reasonable. "Well, traditionally, the bride's family pays for the wedding mum." "Natalie, I don't have that kind of money to spend on a one-day event," I said carefully. "My entire retirement savings is around $300,000. That has to last me potentially 20 or 30 more years." Her expression hardened. "But you own your house outright. You could take out a home equity loan." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You want me to put my home at risk for a wedding in Bali?" "It's not just any wedding, Mum. It's my wedding. Don't you want me to have the perfect day?" We went back and forth for hours. I tried to explain my financial reality, that even if I had the money, spending it on a lavish destination wedding would be irresponsible. I suggested alternatives: a beautiful but less extravagant wedding, locally reducing the guest list, finding vendors who weren't celebrities in their field. "I can contribute $20,000, I finally offered. "That's a significant amount for me, and it shows how much I support your marriage." Natalie's face flushed with anger. $20,000! That won't even cover the flowers and cake. If you loved me, you'd find a way to make this happen. "Loving you doesn't mean bankrupting myself," I said, my voice breaking. "And loving you doesn't mean giving you everything you want when what you want isn't reasonable. If you won't help us have the wedding we deserve, then maybe you shouldn't come at all," she snapped. Those words cut deep, but I held firm. The evening ended with Natalie storming out of the guest room where I was staying and telling me I should find a hotel for the remainder of my visit. The next morning, James's parents called and invited me to brunch without Natalie and James. Over mimosas and tense smiles, they made their position clear. "Lola, we understand financial constraints, we really do," Vivian said with a condescending smile. "But this wedding will establish Natalie and James's social standing for years to come. Surely you can make some sacrifices for your only daughter's future." "I've been making sacrifices for Natalie her entire life," I replied calmly, "and I taught her that extravagance doesn't equal happiness. I'm sorry we disagree on this." When I returned home to California, the fallout began immediately. Natalie launched what I can only describe as a social media campaign against me. Without naming me directly, she posted about toxic parents who refuse to support their children's happiness, and the heartbreak of planning a wedding when your own mother doesn't care enough to help. Her friends commented with supportive messages: "You deserve the world," and "Some people are just jealous they never had something so beautiful." A few even directly mentioned me. "I can't believe your mum is being so selfish." The weekly video calls with Tyler suddenly stopped. My texts went unanswered. When I called James's phone to speak with my grandson, his mother Vivian answered and said they were too busy to talk. The most painful moment came when I received a text from Natalie. "I've decided that having you at the wedding would create too much negative energy. Please respect our decision to celebrate without you there." I cried for days after that message. Had I made a terrible mistake? Should I have just taken out the loan and given her what she wanted? The doubt was crushing. But every time I ran the numbers with my modest teacher's pension and retirement savings, the answer was clear: funding their extravagant wedding would jeopardize my financial security for decades to come. I had to accept the painful truth. I had made the right financial decision, but it might cost me my relationship with my daughter. and grandson. The social aftermath of my refusal spread beyond just Natalie's inner circle. Living in the same small town where I'd taught for decades meant I was well known in the community, and word travels fast. Former students, now adults, with children of their own, would approach me at the grocery store or coffee shop with concerned looks. "Mrs. Johnson, is everything okay with you and Natalie? I saw her posts online." Some friends took Natalie's side without ever asking for mine. Linda, who I'd had lunch with monthly for 20 years, sent me a terse email. "I can't believe you wouldn't help your own daughter with her wedding. I raised my children to know they could count on me for anything." She cancelled our next lunch date, and I haven't heard from her since. Others, particularly those who knew me well, stood by me. My friend Susan, also a retired teacher, brought over wine and chocolates after hearing about the situation. "You taught an entire generation of children about financial responsibility," she reminded me. "You can't abandon those principles now just because it's uncomfortable." The hardest moments were the community events I couldn't avoid. At a former colleague's retirement party, I overheard two women whispering, "That's Natalie's mum, the one who refused to pay for her wedding. Can you imagine being so stingy with your only child?" I held my head high and pretended not to hear, but inside I was crumbling. These people were hearing a carefully crafted narrative that painted me as a villain, not the complete story. 3 weeks after the blow-up, I made an appointment with my financial advisor, Martin. I needed objective confirmation that I had made the right decision. Martin had helped me plan my retirement for years and knew my financial situation intimately. "Lola, let's look at the numbers together," he said kindly, turning his computer screen toward me. He showed me projections of my retirement fund with normal living expenses and typical healthcare costs as I aged. "Now let's see what happens if we remove $100,000 now," he said, adjusting the spreadsheet. The projected end date of my funds shifted dramatically, showing me potentially running out of money by age 85 instead of having sufficient funds beyond 90. "But what if I took out a home equity loan like Natalie suggested?" I asked. Martin frowned. "That would mean monthly payments of about $600 for 15 years plus interest. That's nearly 20% of your monthly pension income. It would significantly impact your standard of living and create financial stress during what should be your relaxing retirement years." He leaned forward, his expression serious. "Lola, as your financial advisor, I cannot recommend jeopardizing your retirement security for a one-day event, no matter how emotional the request. You've worked too hard for too long to put yourself in that position." His professional assessment confirmed what I already knew in my heart, but it didn't ease the emotional pain of the situation. The complete separation from Tyler was perhaps the most devastating consequence. For 2 solid months, I had no contact with my precious grandson. No video calls, no photos, no updates on his development. He was 4 years old enough to wonder why Grandma had suddenly disappeared from his life, but too young to understand the complex adult conflicts at play. I fell into a depression during this period. My house, once my peaceful retirement sanctuary, felt empty and silent. I would find myself looking at photos of Tyler, wondering if he was forgetting me. Was he asking about me? What was Natalie telling him about why his grandmother was suddenly gone? I tried sending small gifts and cards to Tyler, but they were returned unopened. I left voicemails for Natalie that went unanswered. I even reached out to James, directly appealing to his sense of fairness, but received only a formal text stating, "We feel it's best to have some space right now. Please respect our boundaries." Boundaries. As if I were the one who had behaved inappropriately by refusing to risk my financial security. My true friends became my lifeline during this dark time. Susan and my other close friend Diane would take me out for walks, bring over meals, and simply sit with me when the loneliness became overwhelming. My neighbour Tom, a retired widower who had gone through estrangement from his own son years earlier, offered particularly helpful perspective. "They're using the child as a weapon," Because it's the most powerful one they have, he said one evening as we sat on my porch. But remember, Lola, you're teaching Natalie an important lesson right now, even if she doesn't see it. You're showing her that love doesn't mean being a doormat. Just when I had begun to accept that this estrangement might be permanent, I received an unexpected text message from Natalie. Mum, I've had time to think about everything. I miss you, and I know Tyler does too. James and I would like to invite you to dinner at the Beacon next Friday at 7 p.m. to talk things through. I think we all said things we regret. Time to heal our family. My heart soared with hope and relief. The Beacon was an upscale restaurant in San Francisco. Natalie and James must be coming to California to see me. This was the olive branch I had been praying for. Perhaps they had reconsidered their wedding plans, or at least found a compromise we could all live with. I read and reread the message dozens of times, analyzing every word. Time to heal our family. Those words filled me with cautious optimism. Despite everything, Natalie was still my daughter, and I wanted nothing more than to rebuild our relationship. I texted back immediately, I would love that, sweetheart. I've missed you and Tyler so much. Looking forward to seeing you all. The next week was a roller coaster of emotions. I vacillated between excitement about reconciliation and anxiety that something might go wrong. I bought a small silver bracelet for Natalie as a peace offering, not extravagant but meaningful, with a small charm that read, "Family Forever." I also called my friend Susan and shared the good news. Her response was measured. "I'm happy you'll have a chance to reconnect," she said carefully. "But Lola, something about this feels off to me. The Beacon is extremely expensive, and they're coming all the way from New York just for dinner. Just be careful, okay?" I dismissed her concerns as overly cautious. "Natalie wants to reconcile," I insisted. "This is a fresh start." The night of the dinner, I spent hours getting ready. I chose a burgundy dress that Natalie had once complimented, styled my silver hair carefully, and even splurged on a professional manicure. I wanted to look my best for this reunion, to show Natalie that I was still the mother who loved her unconditionally, despite our disagreement. As I drove to San Francisco, my mind filled with hopeful scenarios. Perhaps they'd found other funding for the wedding. Maybe James's parents had decided to contribute more. Or most hopefully, maybe Natalie had reconsidered and chosen a more modest celebration that reflected real values rather than social climbing. Whatever the case, I was ready to listen to, compromise where I could, without sacrificing my financial security, and most importantly, to reconnect with my grandson, Tyler. Little did I know that I was driving straight into a carefully orchestrated trap. The Beacon restaurant glowed with warm light as I handed my keys to the valet. My heart pounded with a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. After confirming my reservation, the hostess led me through the elegant dining room, past tables of well-dressed patrons enjoying their expensive meals. In the far corner, I spotted Natalie's blonde hair. She was sitting with her back to me, James beside her. As I approached, I noticed 3 other people at the table, 2 men and a woman, all in formal business attire. No sign of Tyler. "Natalie," I said, reaching the table. She turned her face, composed and cool. "Mom, you're right on time." No hug, no warm greeting, just that formal acknowledgement. My heart sank, but I maintained my smile. "It's so good to see you, sweetheart," I said, bending to kiss her cheek. She stiffened slightly, but allowed it. "Where's Tyler?" "He's with James's parents," she replied. "We thought it best to have an adults-only conversation tonight." James stood and pulled out a chair for me. "Lola, good to see you," he said, his tone professional rather than familial. No hug from him either. As I sat down, Natalie gestured to the 3 strangers. "Mum, I'd like you to meet Marcus Winters, Stephanie Reed, and Daniel Cooper. They're financial advisors who have been helping us plan for our future." Financial advisors at a family reconciliation dinner. Something felt very wrong. The woman, Stephanie, handed me a business card. "Ms. Johnson, pleasure to meet you. We're here to discuss some options that could benefit everyone in the family. I glanced at the card. It read, Stephanie Reed, attorney at law, not financial advisor. I thought this was a family dinner, I said carefully, looking directly at Natalie. You said you wanted to heal our relationship. This is about healing, Natalie replied smoothly, about creating stability for our family's future, including Tyler's future. The waiter arrived to take drink orders. The 3 financial advisors each ordered expensive scotch. James selected a $300 bottle of wine. I asked for water with lemon, my appetite suddenly gone. Throughout the appetizer course, the conversation remained superficial. Natalie talked about Tyler's preschool achievements, and James mentioned a promotion at work. The 3 strangers mostly observed, occasionally asking pointed questions about my retirement, my home, and my health. Do you live alone, Ms. Johnson? Marcus asked between bites of his $40 crab cake. Have you considered what would happen if you had a medical emergency? Daniel inquired, while cutting into his steak tartare. Many people your age find managing finances increasingly difficult, Stephanie added with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I answered politely, but briefly, increasingly certain that this dinner had nothing to do with reconciliation. After the main courses arrived, Stephanie reached into her leather briefcase and pulled out a thick document folder. Ms. Johnson, we've prepared some papers that we feel would be in everyone's best interest, she said, sliding the folder toward me. It's a power of attorney arrangement that would allow Natalie to make financial decisions on your behalf. I stared at the document, my fork frozen midway to my mouth. Power of attorney, I'm perfectly capable of managing my own finances. Mum, this is just a precaution, Natalie interjected. Many people your age set these up. It would give everyone peace of mind. I'm 65 and in excellent health, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. There's no medical or mental reason for me to sign away control of my finances. Marcus leaned forward. Ms. Johnson, we've looked into your accounts. Excuse me, I interrupted, genuinely shocked. How would you have access to my personal financial information? He continued as if I hadn't spoken. Your pension and savings are quite substantial for a retired teacher. With proper management, those assets could be working much harder for you. And for your family, added Daniel. Think of Tyler's education fund, for instance. I finally understood what was happening. This wasn't about reconciliation. This wasn't even about the wedding anymore. This was an attempt to gain legal control of my money. I looked at my daughter, searching for some sign of the compassionate girl I had raised. Natalie, what is this really about? Her expression hardened. It's about what's fair, Mum. You refuse to help with our wedding. You clearly don't understand the value of investing in our future, so we found another solution. By trying to take control of my finances, Natalie, this is wrong on so many levels. That's when she pulled out her phone and showed me a recent picture of Tyler at the park, his smile wide as he fed ducks. Tyler asks about you all the time, Mum. It breaks my heart to tell him that Grandma is too busy to see him. The implicit threat was clear. Either sign this power of attorney, she said coldly, or you'll never see your grandson grow up. The 3 lawyers watched impassively, as if this kind of emotional blackmail was routine in their line of work. James stared at his plate, unwilling to meet my eyes. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The hurt and confusion gave way to a calm clarity. I had spent my entire career teaching young people about integrity and consequences. I had raised my daughter to understand right from wrong. I would not be bullied, not even by my own child. I calmly opened my purse, retrieved my phone, and made a call while everyone at the table watched in confusion. Hello, Richard. Yes, I'm at the restaurant now. Could you join us, please? Thank you. I set my phone down and smiled at the table. Before I sign anything, there's someone I'd like you all to meet. Natalie's confident expression faltered slightly. Who was that, Mum? We don't need anyone else involved in our family business. Oh, I think we do. I replied, taking a sip of my water. You see, after you blocked me and kept Tyler away, I had a feeling something wasn't right. So I consulted my own attorney about elder financial abuse laws in California. Fascinating subject, really. The colour drained from Stephanie's face. Ms. Johnson, this meeting is confidential. Is it? I asked innocently. I don't recall signing any confidentiality agreement, and I should mention that Richard suggested I record any unusual financial discussions for my own protection. I patted my purse where my phone had indeed been recording since I sat down. Within minutes, Richard Lopez, my attorney, appeared at our table. He was a distinguished man in his 50s, whom I had taught in high school decades earlier, now a respected elder law specialist. Good evening, he said, pleasantly pulling up a chair. I understand we're discussing power of attorney arrangements. Behind him, nearly unnoticed, a woman in a blazer quietly took a seat at a nearby table. Her attention focused on our group. Richard glanced at the documents, then at the three lawyers. I see. And which firm do you represent? The three exchanged uncomfortable glances. Stephanie finally answered, Winters, Reed and Cooper, estate planning specialists. Richard nodded thoughtfully. Interesting. I wasn't aware that estate planning now involved threatening elderly clients with loss of access to their grandchildren. The California Bar Association might find that noteworthy, as would Detective Garcia over there. He nodded toward the woman in the blazer. The atmosphere at the table transformed instantly. The three lawyers began gathering their papers with remarkable speed. We clearly have a misunderstanding, Marcus said, standing abruptly. Perhaps it's best if we continue this another time. I believe we understand each other perfectly, Richard replied, and I'll be filing a formal complaint about your conduct with the bar tomorrow morning. Natalie's face had turned from confident to panicked. Mum, you don't understand. We were just trying to protect your assets. By attempting to coerce power of attorney from me, by using my grandson as leverage. No, Natalie, I understand exactly what was happening here. My voice remained calm but firm. As the three lawyers hastily departed, the restaurant manager approached. Is everything all right here? Actually, Richard said, we could use a private room to continue this family discussion if one is available. The manager, sensing the tension, nodded. Of course. Please follow me. As we moved to a small private dining area, I felt strangely empowered. For months, I had been the victim in Natalie's narrative. Now, finally, the truth was coming to light. Detective Garcia joined us, introducing herself as a specialist in elder financial abuse cases. Once seated in the private room, I looked directly at my daughter. Natalie, it's time for honesty. What's really going on? In the privacy of the small dining room with only Richard, Detective Garcia, James, Natalie and myself present, the facade finally cracked. Natalie's composed expression crumbled and to my surprise, she burst into tears. Everything's falling apart, she sobbed, mascara streaking down her cheeks. We're drowning in debt, Mum. The wedding was supposed to fix everything. James, looking defeated, finally spoke up. I lost my job 8 months ago. The firm downsized and I was among the first to go. This was news to me. 8 months, but you just mentioned a promotion during dinner. That was a lie, James admitted, not meeting my eyes. Just like everything else we've been presenting to the world, I've been unemployed, secretly sending out resumes while pretending to go to work each day. Natalie wiped her tears, smearing her expensive makeup. The income alone couldn't maintain our lifestyle. We've been putting everything on credit cards just to keep up appearances. Keep up appearances for whom? I asked, genuinely baffled. For everyone, Natalie exclaimed. James's family, our friends, our social circle. Do you have any idea what would happen if people found out we couldn't afford our apartment or Tyler's private preschool? We'd be social outcasts. Detective Garcia raised an eyebrow, but remained professionally silent. Richard took notes discreetly. So, the extravagant wedding, I began, was our last hope. James finished. My parents agreed to contribute, but only 50,000. They believe in self-reliance and think we should pay for most of it ourselves. We thought if we could pull off this wedding, it would cement our social standing. My connections there might lead to a new job offer. And when I refused to pay the rest, you decided to try to take control of my retirement savings instead. I said, the pieces finally falling into place. Natalie nodded miserably. Those lawyers approached us after seeing my social media posts about you refusing to help with the wedding. They suggested this strategy, saying it happens all the time with elderly parents. I'm hardly elderly, I noted dryly. They said we could easily make a case that you were becoming financially incapable, she continued. Use your age, the fact that you live alone, maybe suggest some memory issues. I felt a chill at how casually my daughter had considered lying about my mental capacity to gain control of my finances. How much debt are we talking about? Richard asked, cutting to the practical matters. James hesitated, then answered, about $180,000 across various credit cards and loans. I gasped involuntarily. The figure was staggering. Plus, we're 3 months behind on rent for our apartment, Natalie added quietly. And the wedding deposits? I asked. Non-refundable, James said. We've already put down 30,000 in deposits we can't get back. The full remaining balance is due in 6 weeks. Detective Garcia, who had been listening silently, finally spoke. Mr. and Mrs. Lancaster attempting to obtain power of attorney through coercion is a serious matter. So is misrepresenting yourselves as in need of financial protection when it's actually for personal gain. These actions could constitute elder abuse under California law. Natalie paled. We never meant to hurt anyone. We were desperate. Desperation doesn't justify what happened here tonight, I said firmly. You were willing to legally take control of my finances against my will. You used my grandson as emotional leverage. You hired attorneys to intimidate me. What happens now? James asked, looking at Detective Garcia. That depends partly on your mother-in-law, the detective replied. Ms. Johnson, do you wish to press charges? All eyes turned to me. The weight of the decision was immense. On one hand, what they had attempted was unconscionable. On the other, they were still my family, my daughter, her husband, the parents of my beloved grandson. I need some time to consider my options, I said finally. But regardless of legal consequences, we need to establish clear boundaries moving forward. I turned to Natalie and James. First, I will not be providing money for your wedding or to cover your debts. Those are consequences of your own choices. They nodded glumly. Second, using Tyler as a pawn in this situation ends now. My relationship with my grandson is not contingent on financial support. Third, before any kind of relationship can be rebuilt, you both need professional financial counseling. You've lost touch with reality if you believe maintaining appearances justifies this level of deception and debt. And finally, we will all participate in family therapy if we're going to move forward from this. What happened tonight broke something fundamental in our relationship, and it won't heal on its own. Richard nodded approvingly at my conditions. What about the lawyers? James asked nervously. I will be filing a formal complaint with the Bar Association, Richard confirmed. Their behaviour was deeply unethical, but that's separate from any action Ms. Johnson might take against you personally. As the gravity of the situation sank in, Natalie looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. Mum, I'm so sorry. I don't know how we got here. I don't recognise myself anymore. For the first time that evening, I saw a glimmer of my real daughter, the person beneath the desperation and materialism. It gave me a small hope that perhaps with time and proper boundaries, healing might be possible. Neither do I, Natalie, I said honestly. But recognising the problem is the first step toward fixing it. The question is whether you're ready to make the difficult changes necessary. James reached for Natalie's hand. We don't have much choice now. Everything's crumbling anyway. Detective Garcia closed her notebook. I'll need statements from everyone, but we can arrange that for tomorrow. Ms. Johnson, please take some time to consider whether you want to pursue charges. There's no rush on that decision. As our unusual dinner meeting concluded, I felt emotionally drained but strangely liberated. The truth was finally out in the open. The path forward would be challenging, but at least it would be based on honesty rather than manipulation and deception. When Natalie hugged me goodbye, it was awkward and tentative. Nothing like our embraces from years past, but it was a start. A small, fragile beginning to whatever our new relationship might become. As I drove home alone that night, I reflected on how quickly priorities can become distorted, how easily values can be corrupted by the pressure to keep up appearances. I had stood my ground not just for my financial security, but for something much more valuable, my dignity and self-respect. The road ahead would be long and uncertain, but I knew one thing for certain: I would never again allow anyone, not even my beloved daughter, to manipulate me through fear or obligation. Some boundaries once established must never be crossed again. The 3 months following that fateful dinner were among the most difficult of my life. True to my word, I established clear boundaries and conditions for rebuilding our relationship. First came the legal aftermath. After much soul-searching and consultation with Richard, I decided not to press charges against Natalie and James, but I did move forward with a formal complaint against the 3 attorneys. Their predatory behaviour towards seniors deserved professional consequences. I also filed for a temporary restraining order against them, not against my daughter and her husband, but against the lawyers who had facilitated the scheme. Richard assured me this was prudent, given their access to my personal information. During those first weeks, I experienced profound grief. Not just for the broken trust with my daughter, but for the realization that our relationship had been built on increasingly shaky ground for years. How had I missed the signs? When had money and status become more important to Natalie than integrity and family? The separation from Tyler continued to be painful, but now it had structure and purpose. I insisted on supervised visits twice monthly, with a family therapist present. These sessions were awkward at first, Tyler confused by the formal setting, Natalie tense and defensive, me trying to bridge the gap without overstepping. "Grandma, why don't you come to our house anymore?" Tyler asked during our first visit, his innocent question cutting straight to the heart of the matter. "Sometimes grown-ups need to sort through complicated feelings," I explained gently, "but I want you to know that I love you very much, and that will never change." To cope with the emotional strain, I joined a support group for parents of estranged adult children. The stories I heard there were both heartbreaking and comforting. I wasn't alone in facing this particular type of family fracture. Many of the conflicts centered around money inheritance or differing values. The hardest part, shared one woman whose son hadn't spoken to her in 5 years, is accepting that you can't control their choices. You can only control your response. This became my mantra during dark moments when I questioned whether I'd done the right thing. Could I have prevented this outcome? Should I have simply given in to Natalie's demands to preserve family peace? But deep down, I knew that acquiescing would have only reinforced unhealthy patterns. Sometimes true love means standing firm when someone you care about is headed down a destructive path. I also reconnected with friends who had stood by me. Susan and Diane became regular fixtures in my life, providing emotional support and practical help when needed. I started volunteering at a local literacy program, finding purpose in helping others while my own situation remained unresolved. Meanwhile, Natalie and James were facing their own difficult reality. As required by our agreement, they enrolled in financial counselling through a reputable non-profit organisation. Their first assignment was creating an honest budget that reflected their actual income, not their aspirational lifestyle. It was humiliating, Natalie admitted during one of our therapy sessions. Seeing it all laid out in black and white, how much we've been spending on appearances versus necessities. Their counsellor had given them an ultimatum: either dramatically downsize their lifestyle or face bankruptcy. They chose the former, moving from their luxury apartment to a modest two-bedroom in a middle-class neighborhood. They sold their luxury car designer clothes and many of the high-end items they'd accumulated. James finally found employment, not at a prestigious firm like before, but at a smaller company with a reasonable salary. It was a step down in status, but offered stability they desperately needed. The strange thing is, James shared during a particularly breakthrough session, "I'm actually less stressed now. There's something freeing about not having to pretend anymore." The wedding plans were completely overhauled. They cancelled the Bali extravaganza, losing their non-refundable deposits, but preventing further financial damage. Instead, they began planning a small ceremony at a local park with just close family and friends. Our family therapy sessions, guided by Dr. Eleanor Marsh, were challenging but productive. We unearthed patterns that had been developing for years. My difficulty in setting boundaries earlier, Natalie's equation of money with love, the insidious influence of social comparison. "Natalie, can you articulate what you were really seeking with the elaborate wedding?" Dr. Marsh asked during one pivotal session. After a long pause, Natalie answered, "Validation, proof that we belonged in that world, that we weren't frauds." "And did you ever feel truly accepted in that social circle?" Dr. Marsh pressed. "No," Natalie admitted quietly. "There was always someone with more, someone better connected. It was never enough." These realizations didn't heal our relationship overnight, but they created a foundation of honesty we had been lacking. Slowly, carefully, we began rebuilding trust, not rushing the process, but allowing each small positive interaction to gradually reshape our connection. By the 6-month mark, we had progressed to unsupervised visits with Tyler. The joy of having my grandson back in my life cannot be overstated. We resumed our special traditions, baking cookies, reading his favorite books, taking walks to the park. He adjusted to the changes with the resilience typical of children his age, though he occasionally asked questions about why everyone seemed different now. "Grandma, are you and Mummy friends again?" he asked one afternoon as we fed ducks at the local pond. "We're working on it, sweetheart," I answered truthfully. Sometimes people who love each other need time to understand each other better. As the 1-year anniversary of our confrontation approached, Natalie and James were ready to move forward with their revised wedding plans. The new celebration would cost under $5,000 total. A community centre reception, homemade decorations, a simple dress Natalie found at a consignment shop. "Mum, would you still be willing to contribute the $20,000 you originally offered?" Natalie asked during a Sunday dinner at my home. I was surprised by the question given their scaled-back plans. "The whole wedding is only costing $5,000 now. Why would you need more?" "We wouldn't use it for the wedding," James explained. "We'd put it toward paying down our remaining debt. The financial counselor suggested we ask if your offer still stands, but use it responsibly this time." I considered the request carefully. "I'll contribute $10,000, $5,000 for your wedding and $5,000 toward your debt, but with conditions. You'll continue financial counseling for at least another year, and you'll match every dollar of debt payment from your own earnings." They readily agreed, recognizing the fairness of these terms. It wasn't about the money anymore, but about establishing healthy financial patterns for their future. The wedding itself was a revelation, simple, heartfelt, and genuinely joyful in a way I suspect their planned extravaganza never would have been. Tyler served as the ring bearer, proudly carrying the simple bands on a small pillow he had decorated himself. When it came time for Mother of the Bride activities, I was included with warmth and appreciation. During the reception, Natalie took the microphone and publicly acknowledged our journey. "I want to thank my mother," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Not just for her support today, but for having the courage to stand firm when I was lost. Mum, you taught me that real wealth isn't about what we own or how we appear to others. It's about integrity, living within our means, and valuing relationships over status. I didn't understand that a year ago, but I'm learning now." Her words were the most meaningful gift I could have received, evidence that painful as our journey had been, it had led to genuine growth and understanding. As we settled into our new, normal weekly family dinners became a tradition. No more pretense, no more keeping up appearances, just honest conversations around my modest dining table, often featuring casseroles and home-baked desserts rather than expensive catered meals. Tyler thrived in this more authentic environment. He spent regular weekends with me building the kind of grandmother-grandson relationship I had always hoped for, based on real connection rather than material indulgence. The healing wasn't perfect or complete. There were still moments of tension, occasional setbacks when old patterns threatened to resurface. But we had established a framework for working through conflicts honestly, without manipulation or power plays. I realized that by refusing to fund that extravagant wedding, I had given my daughter something far more valuable than a lavish party. I had given her the opportunity to discover what truly matters. That authentic relationships built on honesty and respect are the foundation of genuine happiness. In protecting my financial boundaries, I had demonstrated a form of love more meaningful than simply writing checks. True love sometimes means saying no when yes would be easier but ultimately harmful. It means holding people accountable while still offering support as they find their way back to solid ground. As I look back on that challenging chapter of our lives, I'm grateful for the strength I found to stand firm when it would have been easier to give in. By refusing to be manipulated or intimidated, I helped break a cycle that could have continued into the next generation. The wealthiest people aren't those with the biggest bank accounts or most impressive possessions. True wealth comes from relationships grounded in mutual respect, from the courage to live authentically rather than for appearances, and from the wisdom to recognize what's truly worth investing in, not just with our money, but with our hearts. Have you ever had to stand firm on a difficult boundary with someone you love? How did it impact your relationship in the long run? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life experiences and the lessons they've taught me. Remember, sometimes the hardest stands we take lead to the most meaningful growth. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to maintain healthy boundaries in your own relationships.